In today's English lesson, we are going to look at a news clip about a hurricane that is currently heading towards the state of Florida. Just a couple hours ago, I put up a poll asking which English lesson would you like to see next. I thought France stopping weapons going to Israel would be number one, but no, the hurricane that is heading to Florida was the winner. So let's get right into it. I will show a short clip of the news and then I will come back and I will teach you all of the English you will need to know for your next English conversation, or maybe you are taking the TOEFL or IELTS exams.
National story where tracking Milton has downgraded to a Category 4 hurricane as it heads toward Florida's west coast.
One of the difficult terms they mentioned in the newscast was tracking. For each of these words, I will have an official definition. I will use it in a sentence, something relating to Hurricane Milton, and I will also have a picture that I hope helps explain the difficult term. Tracking. Tracking, what does that mean? Following the path of something. Experts are tracking Hurricane Milton as it moves towards Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a city in the United States that could be damaged the most by a hurricane. It sits pretty low. It sits pretty close to sea level. And experts are really worried about something called a storm surge. We will talk more about that later. If you look at that picture, it has nothing to do with hurricanes. So I want to teach you another example of how we use tracking in English. It looks like that picture was taken at the gym. That person could be tracking their workouts. Maybe they are tracking how much food they eat every day. Maybe they are tracking how much weight they have lost. They also mentioned downgraded. Now, in the picture, it says upgrade. You hear that quite a bit. Let's say you have an older phone and you want to upgrade it. It's just another way to say you want to buy a better phone, a newer phone. Downgrade, when it comes to hurricanes, it means they're not as strong anymore. To reduce the strength or importance of something. Hurricanes have 5 different categories. A hurricane that is category 1 has winds of about 74 miles per hour. I don't know what that is in kilometers per hour, so I will put that on the screen somewhere. Category 5 is the strongest hurricane. Category 5 hurricane has wind speeds of 157 miles per hour. There is no category 6. Hurricane Milton was a category 5 hurricane at one time, but it was downgraded to a category 4. It might even be downgraded to a category 3. But experts warn the winds are not what you have to be worried about. Yes, a little bit, but it's that storm surge. Hurricane Milton was downgraded from category 5 to 4 as it reached Fort Myers. Fort Myers is another city in Florida. We also talk about patients in a hospital. You might hear them in critical condition or stable condition. If a patient gets sicker in the hospital, their condition might be downgraded. A quick favor. If you are learning any English from this lesson, would you mind hitting that like button? And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe so you never miss another English lesson.
National story where tracking Milton has downgraded to a Category 4 hurricane as it heads toward Florida's west coast.
Well, it's expected to weaken to a possible Category 3 storm upon landfall. Officials say that the effects could still be deadly and destructive.
Meteorologists, those are people who try to predict weather. Meteorologists will name these hurricanes, and you may be wondering, how does a hurricane get its name? Let's talk about it right here. Hurricanes are given names to make them easier to talk about. The names come from a list created by the World Meteorological Organization. That is tough to say. Meteorology is the study of weather. Meteorologists predict weather, study weather. These names alternate between male and female and are reused every 6 years. If a hurricane is very bad, its name is never used again. You might also hear that name has been retired. I have a couple other English lessons on this channel about Hurricane Helene that hit the United States just about 2 weeks ago. Some parts of the United States that were hit by Helene will also be hit by Hurricane Milton. But Hurricane Helene did so much damage that name will never be used again. It will be retired. And there you have the list of storms all the way up until 2029. Let me get rid of my picture. And you can see 2024, there is Helene, and down a little further is Milton. They are also named in alphabetical order from A to, well, it looks like W there. There are no storms that begin with Z. There was one year where there were so many storms, they ran out of letters, so they started using Greek letters like alpha and beta.
Big national story where tracking Milton has downgraded to a Category 4 hurricane as it heads toward Florida's west coast.
Well, it's expected to weaken to a possible Category 3 storm upon landfall. Officials say that the effects could still be deadly and destructive. Connor Hansen joins us live now from Tampa, Florida with the latest on Hurricane Milton.
Melvin, good morning. As you mentioned, even with that hurricane downgrading to a Category 4, possibly a Category 3, experts are warning, do not downplay this extremely dangerous hurricane because that storm surge is already on its way.
In the news clip, they also mentioned weakened, almost like this, weakened, but it's not. It's different. Let's talk about what this weakened means. Made less strong. The storm weakened slightly before hitting Tampa Bay, but it remains dangerous. And there in that picture, you can see that person is very weak. They cannot lift a lot of weight. The opposite of weakened is to strengthen. Luckily, the hurricane is not gaining strength. It's not becoming stronger. You might know this one. The weekend. What is the weekend? It's the end of the week. The end of the week. It says it right there. Weekend. Saturday and Sunday. Hurricane Milton is expected to hit over the weekend, causing major disruptions. That sentence is not actually true. It is expected to hit either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. Destructive. What does that mean? Causing great damage. Milton is a destructive storm, leaving widespread damage in Fort Myers. Tampa Bay, Fort Myers, Sarasota, those are names of cities that could see damage from Hurricane Milton. Got a couple other words that sound like destructive. Destructive is an adjective. Destroy, that is the verb, and destruction is the noun. Hopefully Hurricane Milton will not destroy too many buildings in Tampa Bay. Hopefully the destruction in Tampa Bay will be minimal. It's another way to say there won't be too much of it. I hope this is not true. Hurricane Milton destroyed many buildings. Downplay, to make something seem less important or not as bad. Officials warned residents not to downplay how destructive Hurricane Milton could be. I will use downplay in an example that doesn't have anything to do with a hurricane. Let's pretend I got into an accident. Maybe I damaged my car, but I didn't destroy it. It can be fixed, but there is a lot of damage. I have a wife. Her name is Jamie. Let's say after I got into my accident, I gave her a call and told her I had been in an accident. But maybe I downplay it. Maybe I say, oh, it's not too bad. It won't take a lot of money to fix, even though it might take a lot of money to fix. I'm downplaying it so she won't worry as much. When I get home, and she can see that I'm okay and the car is not too bad, I can explain the real story to her. That way she won't freak out too much while we are talking on the phone.
Connor Hansen joins us live now from Tampa, Florida with the latest on Hurricane Milton.
Melvin, good morning. As you mentioned, even with that hurricane downgrading to a Category 4, possibly a Category 3, experts are warning, do not downplay this extremely dangerous hurricane because that storm surge.
I've mentioned storm surge already, but the news just mentioned storm surge. Let's talk about what that is. A rise in water from the ocean caused by a hurricane. In the picture, you can see what a storm surge is. So meteorologists are saying even though the wind is slowing down, that storm surge is going to be huge. And since Tampa Bay is such a low city, it could really do some damage. A dangerous storm surge is expected along the Gulf Coast as Milton approaches, as it gets closer. Later on, the newscast will mention where the Gulf Coast is located, and I'll have a picture for you. We'll talk all about it in just a little bit.
As you mentioned, even with that hurricane downgrading to a Category 4, possibly a Category 3, experts are warning, do not downplay this extremely dangerous hurricane because that storm surge is already on its way, and so will the extreme winds for a wide swath of Florida.
A wide swath. It's not easy to say. A wide swath. It's another way to say a large area. Hurricane Milton could impact a wide swath of Florida, including Tampa Bay.
Because that storm surge is already on its way, and so will the extreme winds for a wide swath of Florida. You can see the waterfront here behind me. Some areas could hit a 15-foot storm surge. That means where I'm standing could go underwater.
We've got a big one coming.
Hurricane Milton is barreling towards the west coast of Florida.
Barreling towards. I believe we talked about this one before when we talked about Hurricane Helene. It means moving quickly and forcefully. In the picture, I would call those things rockets, missiles, maybe bombs. Recently, I did an English lesson about missiles barreling towards Israel. They were sent by Iran. Let's look at a sentence that uses barreling towards. The storm is barreling towards Fort Myers, expected to hit by midnight. Now, Hurricane Milton hasn't made landfall yet, but the news story talks about making landfall. So let's talk about what that is. When a storm reaches, take a guess, land. All hurricanes start in the water. Hopefully the hurricane stays in the water and never makes landfall. But unfortunately, we know Hurricane Milton will make landfall. We just don't know exactly when or exactly where. Well, according to this example sentence, Milton will make landfall near Tampa Bay with high winds and flooding.
We've got a big one coming.
Hurricane Milton is barreling towards the west coast of Florida. The powerful storm could make landfall either late Wednesday or early Thursday, possibly striking the region between Tampa Bay and Fort Myers.
There's going to be impacts far beyond wherever the eye of the storm is.
The eye of the storm. If you notice in that picture, there is an arrow and it is pointing at the eye of the storm. It is the calm center of a hurricane. Yes, that is pronounced calm. That means there is no wind blowing in the center of the storm. There is no wind blowing in the eye of the storm. The eye of the storm passed over Fort Myers, offering a brief moment of calm. Calm. I mean, there might be an L pronounced there, but there's not much of one. Calm.
There's going to be impacts far beyond wherever the eye of the storm is.
Officials say this could be a once-in-a-century storm. expected to bring intense winds and a life-threatening storm surge that could reach 15 feet in some areas.
They are calling Hurricane Milton a once-in-a-century storm. We are getting quite a few once-in-a-century storms, like almost every year. But let's talk about what a once-in-a-century storm is. It's a storm that happens very rarely. A century is 100 years. Meteorologists. Not easy to say, right? People who try to predict the weather. Meteorologists are calling Milton a once-in-a-century storm due to its strength.
Officials say this could be a once-in-a-century storm, expected to bring intense winds and a life-threatening storm surge that could reach 15 feet in some areas.
We've got buildings that are over 100 years old. They've never seen this kind of wind.
Businesses across mandatory evacuation zones have already shuttered.
Two words that might be difficult here: mandatory and evacuation. Mandatory means something you have to do. Evacuation means you are leaving an area. Let's look at the official definition: a forced order for people to leave an area. Now, in the United States, officials can't really force people to leave an area before a storm, but if there is a mandatory evacuation, it basically means if you stay, there isn't going to be anyone around to help you because we're all leaving too. If you decide to stay, you are on your own. A mandatory evacuation was issued for Tampa Bay ahead of Milton's arrival. We are going to talk about two types of shuttered. That one, which is how they use it in the newscast, and this one. Shuttered means to close something, often for protection. A lot of houses near where I live have shutters on the window. They are just for decoration. They don't really shut to protect the windows, but I think it's different in Florida. They might actually use their shutters to protect the windows from breaking, but shuttered means to close. Shops in Tampa Bay shuttered their windows in preparation for the storm. But shuttered can also mean to shake or tremble in fear. I'm sure this is happening to many people in Florida right now, unfortunately. Residents shuddered in fear as the winds of Milton intensified. They got stronger. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully everyone that was in Tampa Bay has left. You can also find all of the definitions and the example sentences in the description below, just in case you want to study these words while you're not watching the video. You could copy and paste them into a document. Some people have asked, why don't you just give out a free PDF with all of those definitions? I mean, I might someday, and if I do, I will want your email, and then I can send you information on my course, which doesn't exist. Not sure if I will ever do a course. But if I do, I will send out a free PDF and get your email address. Now back to why you clicked on this English lesson to learn English.
We've got buildings that are over 100 years old. They've never seen this kind of wind.
Businesses across mandatory evacuation zones have already shuttered. Walt Disney World, Universal Orlando, and SeaWorld are closing Wednesday. Long lines of traffic are now the theme on highways and outside gas stations as people continue to flee, but pumps are running dry.
I mean, this thing petrifies me.
Flee. What does flee mean? Written that way, we have a couple different types of flees in English, but that way means to run away from danger. Now, in the sentence, I changed flee to the past tense. Thousands of people fled Fort Myers to escape the coming storm. We have a couple words in this newscast that mean scared. Here's another one: petrified. It means extremely scared. Many residents were petrified as Hurricane Milton approached the Gulf Coast. And if you notice, when the news story talks to real residents, like not reporters, they have a pretty strong Southern accent.
I mean, this thing petrifies me.
Major Florida airports have also suspended commercial travel. Those who got on last-minute flights out Tuesday are counting their blessings.
I'm lucky that I got on this flight.
They also talked about suspended commercial travel. What does that mean? Suspended means to stop for a short period of time. And commercial travel, it's just like the opposite of private. These are big airplanes, not like really small, expensive ones that might seat only 5 or 6 people. Commercial, the big airplanes. Stopped travel for a short period of time for safety reasons. If they terminated travel, that means they would stop forever. Airports in Tampa Bay suspended commercial travel as the storm grew stronger. We've talked about destruction already, but what's widespread destruction? Damage over a large area. Hope this sentence doesn't come true, but it looks like it will. Milton caused widespread destruction along the Gulf Coast, leaving many homes damaged. We have been talking all about the Gulf Coast. Let's take a look at a picture of the Gulf Coast. You see that big circle there? That is the Gulf Coast. You may be able to see Cuba, Florida, Mexico there. That piece of water is called the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf Coast is the land surrounding the Gulf of Mexico. Let's get an official definition. The coastline along the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is preparing for Hurricane Milton's arrival, especially near Tampa Bay.
Those who got on last-minute flights out Tuesday are counting their blessings.
I'm lucky that I got on this flight.
And just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene caused widespread destruction, there's a rush to clear debris left over from that storm to prevent it from flying.
And around 6 million people who live along Florida's Gulf Coast have been ordered to evacuate, officials hoping they would have left yesterday. Jen, Melvin.
Connor, what have you been experiencing in terms of the way people are preparing? I know they're boarding up their homes. They've likely, hopefully evacuated in those zones. And then the gas lines, too. I know of a number of gas stations. I think 1,000 gas stations have completely run out.
That's true. There was a huge rush on those gas stations as millions of people tried to get out of this region.
A huge rush. Look at that picture. There are a lot of people trying to put gas into their vehicles. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I would love to live in Florida, the beaches, the sunshine. But when I see people having to evacuate, trying to get gas, not being able to get gas, the long lines on the highway to get to safety, I suddenly don't want to live in Florida anymore. I live many, many miles away from hurricanes. I live in a part of the country where we get a lot of snow and it's cold in the winter. I guess I will take that weather over hurricanes. A big rush is a large number of people doing something quickly. There was a huge rush to buy supplies before Milton hit Sarasota. We haven't talked about Sarasota yet, but that is another city that could be hit by Milton.
I know of a number of gas stations. I think 1,000 gas stations have completely run out.
That's true. There was a huge rush on those gas stations as millions of people tried to get out of this region. But we are hearing the Florida Highway Patrol is actually going to be escorting fuel trucks into this area to those gas stations along those busy evacuation routes. So hopefully that'll help after the storm passes when people badly need that gas.
Escorting. Take a look at the picture. Police cars are escorting that gas truck. It means accompanying someone or something for protection. Police were escorting evacuees out of the storm zone to safer areas. Evacuees, those are people who are evacuating. Look at this picture. There could be a very wealthy man there. Maybe he has a lot of money and he needs protection. Security guards are escorting the wealthy man to the bank. Maybe he's going to the bank to get even more money. And this is a tradition in the United States. It doesn't always happen, but brides, those are women who are about to get married. Brides are often escorted by their fathers down the aisle when they get married. Yeah, she doesn't need protection as she's walking down the aisle, but that's the term we use. That's it. That is the entire English lesson on Milton. I hope everyone living in Florida is able to get to a safe place. I hope we don't see that death toll rise. Enough people died as a result of Hurricane Helene. I did 2 English lessons on Hurricane Helene. If you would like to see them, I've put them both down below. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.